What is up, guys? It's Doodoo Poker here, back for another video. Today is part 2 of the 2-card confidence Preflop Xploits poker course review. So let's get right into the meat and potatoes of the course. Should we be 3-betting more or less in the small blind versus a button RFI? Let's say we're in the small blind. Let's go to GTO Wizard. And we say a reg opens 2.5x, and I have my 14.2% range. Should I be going more or less based on population tendencies? Well, let's take a look at something. If I 3-bet, the button is going to be 4-betting more in theory than in practice. Let's go to 2-card confidence's sims and take a look at his sims. We see the 14.2% right here. This is a GTO 3-bet range, but we want to be employing a less frequency range, a 12.8% range. So what are we doing? We're dropping out hands like ace-4 suited. We're dropping out hands like ace-6 suited. And also the hands like jack-9 suited, queen-9 suited. These hands do not play that well in 3-bet pots versus population. Why? Because button calls more than GTO. Look what button is calling with. If I 3-bet a hand like ace-4 suited, in theory, right here, my opponent is going to call me with ace-6, ace-7, ace-8, right? All these hands that will be 4-bet mixed or pure in a solver. That means you're going to be dominated more than theory. So you don't want to 3-bet a hand like ace-3 suited or a hand like ace-4 suited very often, because you'll be dominated too often. Now let's go to a hand like jack-9 suited. Why is jack-9 suited completely erased from the exploit small blind 3-bet range? It's mostly 3-bet in theory, but it's completely erased in practice. Why? We have to go to the calling range. Let's compare the calling range in theory to the calling range in practice. Let's look at a hand like ace-jack offsuit. In theory, it's 4-bet mixed, mostly 4-bet and then called a little less than 4-bet. But go to a hand like king-jack, queen-jack. Population is calling ace-jack off almost pure, and then a hand like king-jack off more than 4-betting. And then even a hand like queen-jack off is in there sometimes. So what happens is you get dominated again too often, to the point where the solver just completely erases it from the range. So 2 important points. We don't want to be 3-betting hands that are easily dominated. A hand like ace-3 suited, ace-4 suited, get rid of those hands and get rid of a hand like jack-9 suited. Okay, let's go back to notes and go to the second exploit. Remember, in the first exploit, we are going to be 3-betting less because we do not want to get dominated post-flop. In the second exploit, it's going to be big blind versus a small blind open. Should we be 3-betting more or less than theory? Let's go to GTO Wizard and check on the small blind versus big blind. So we are against a reg. The reg RFIs 3x. We have our trusty 3-bet range. We know from theory it's around 16% depending on sizing. But what does 2-card confidence recommend from his pre-flop sims based on population data? Well, if we go to the big blind exploit versus a small blind open, we see that now he is going to be 3-betting range. Again, crazy. But we want to know why we're 3-betting range. They overfold by 2.5%, but that's not the real reason. The real reason is because they do not 4-bet enough. They do not 4-bet enough. Against a range that doesn't 4-bet enough, we get to go crazy with 3-bets because they are overfolding 22.7%, and GTO is 20.1%. But the real reason is the 4-bet. They're not going to 4-bet us enough, so we can punish them by 3-betting range. But what happens if we get 4-bet? Here is where another very cool exploit comes in handy. Let's go back here. So we see the big blind exploit versus a small blind open is we get to 3-bet our entire range, or basically our entire range. But what happens if our opponent 4-bets us from the small blind? What do? Well, look at this exploit. Our exploit in the big blind versus a small blind 4-bet, we get to jam all our pocket pairs. Why am I jamming all my pocket pairs? Let's say I have pocket 5s. We know in theory, pocket 5s is always a call. But let's say I know MDA preflop and I decide to 3-bet. Now my opponent decides to 4-bet. What do I do with my pocket 5s? Well, pocket 5s isn't in here in theory, but let's take a hand like pocket 6s, and we know theory always calls. We should never do this. Look, why should we never do this? Look at the EV difference. The EV difference is over 3 big blinds, but we need to know something about the small blinds range. We know that they under 4-bet, but what they do is, if we look at the sims, we see the big blind exploit is we need to start jamming pocket 6s, pocket 5s, pocket 7s because they have too much of these high cards. What do I mean? I mean, let's go back to the big blind exploit. You see here that versus a 3-bet, the small blind has ace queen, ace jack, right? They have all these, and if you compare this to this, it looks about the same, but that's not the whole story. Because they under 4-bet, the ace queen off, the ace jack off, and the king queen off becomes too much of their range, and as an exploit, we now get to jam pocket pairs. So the first exploit is to 3-bet our entire range. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can just 3-bet the smaller pocket pairs and add those on to your already GTO 3-bet range. But the second exploit versus a small blind 4-bet is to 5-bet jam all the pocket pairs because they're too high card heavy. And we're also ahead of a hand like ace king off if he does decide to call, or if he decides to hero call with ace queen suited. Okay, so 2 more important exploits. You want to be 3-betting in the big blind more than theory versus a small blind RFI because they overfold and they under 4-bet. You definitely want to be 3-betting hands like pocket 5s, 6s, 7s, and 8s pure because we get to 5-bet jam versus the small blind 4-bet. Why? Well, we're ahead of ace king, but we also unblock his bluffs like ace queen off, ace jack off, and king queen off. And we know that even though they under 4-bet, they don't change the frequencies. So the frequencies will be GTO-ish, but we know the range is less, which means there's too much of these hands in the range composition. As an exploit, we now 5-bet jam a hand like pocket 5s to exploit this range composition. Let's go to extreme player profiles. This will be the last part I review. Now, 2-card confidence says he cannot give exact profiles because players are too different, so he breaks them into 2 categories, tight and loose. I'm going to go look at the tight player profile because this is the most likely profile you will encounter in gameplay. Now, if I give you a GTO Wizard sim and we look at this sim and I'm under the gun and a tight small blind 3-bets us, what is your adjustment to a tight 3-bet small blind? I'm under the gun, I RFI, folds to the small blind who 3-bets. I'm sitting with my range under the gun. What should I do? Well, we know to fold more, right? But should you 4-bet more or less? Now, this is very counterintuitive. You want to 4-bet more. Why do I want to 4-bet more? Well, let's go to 2-card confidence in sims. We want to 4-bet more because we need to look at how they're responding. Let's look at the under the gun response to a tight 3-bet. Okay, this is the 3-bet range from the small blind versus an under the gun RFI range. We see this is the MDA range and this is the GTO range. You see how much tighter it is. But when they 3-bet, we want to be employing a 4-bet or fold strategy overall. Why? Because of their reaction to the 4-bet. How are they reacting to the 4-bet? We have to go to another sim. This is the tight small blind's response to an under the gun 4-bet. Look at the GTO response. The GTO response, we can go to GTO Wizard as well. The GTO response is this. Well, jamming ace king suited, jamming ace 5 or 5-betting ace 5. They're not going to 5-bet ace 10 suited and ace jack suited, right? Let's go to simple because this is a better sim. I go to simple sim and I see them jamming ace king off, 5-betting ace 4. People do not do this. People do not 5-bet king jack suited and ace 10 suited, right? Let's go to how people actually play poker. We see from the sim that what they do is they fold too much, but they call a lot of hands that should be 5-bet jamming or 5-betting are going to end up calling. They call ace king off almost pure. They're calling a hand like queens and jacks. Look at the GTO range. Do you think these guys are really going to 5-bet a hand like ace 10, ace 5 suited? No, let's go to GTO Wizard. Are people really 5-betting king jack suited in this spot? No. And they're not going to call these hands either. Look at the calling range. Let's go back to this. The calling range are hands like ace 10 suited, king jack suited. These hands do not exist. They will not do this. What they're going to do is they're going to 5-bet not enough. Remember, when you are thinking about your strategy, you want to think about the response to your aggression. Because even though they're too tight, if I 4-bet, they will not respond with a 5-bet jam enough. They're playing too passive to the 5-bet jam. Theory loves jamming ace king off. Practice just calls. Let me call and take the low variance route. Let me call with the hand like ace king off and take the low variance route. So what we do, according to 2-card confidence, is we 4-bet range under the gun versus a tight small blind 3-bet. Very important to understand this because this is very counterintuitive. You want to be taking all the hands like ace 5 suited, ace 4 suited, which are mostly called in theory. That's the green right here. And you turn those into pure 4-bets because the small blind is not 5-bet jamming enough. So in conclusion, we learned a few things. We learned that button 3-bets more than theory when 3-betting versus a cutoff RFI. We also learned that we should be 3-betting in the big blind versus a small blind RFI. And if we get 4-bet, we should be 5-bet jamming with our pocket pairs. And finally, we learned that we should be 4-betting more, not less, versus a stronger 3-bet range. This course is highly recommended. It really helped me hone my pre-flop MDA edge, and a lot of these adjustments can be easily implemented. We know that pre-flop is low-hanging fruit, so go and grab your fruit basket. We also want to know exactly why we are doing this. We don't just want to memorize the charts. We want to know why we are 4-betting more or 3-betting less. So, highly recommended. 2-card Confidence's Preflop Exploit course. If you enjoy this type of content, please give me a like, please give me a subscribe. New video every single day, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.